It's time to open the Fall Book Society box by Woolberry Fiber Co. Hello, my name is Emily Crow from The Cozy Crow, and welcome to my YouTube channel, and welcome to this book box vlog. This is the fourth one in a series where I am opening the Book Society boxes that Woolberry Fiber Co. has been putting together. She had one for every season, starting with the winter season last year, and this fall season is the last of these boxes. I'm probably going to do another vlog or two kind of tidying up this project because this is a massive work in progress that I have been working on. But this is the last time I'm opening a box for the Book Society boxes. If you haven't seen the other vlogs, I'll make sure to link them up above and down below. But just a little overview. Bethany of Woolberry Fiber Co. has a mystery book that has inspired the contents of this box. And there are 4 skeins of yarn, each labeled with different pages of the book, and as you reach those pages you can open the skein of yarn and see how the yarn has been inspired by what's happening on those pages. It's been super fun to be able to read this book while I'm opening the yarn inspired by it and then make a project with that yarn. There's also some other goodies, both fiber related and not fiber arts related, included in the box that are just open that I can experience when I open the box, which is really fun. So I'll make sure to share all of those here with you. But the project I'm making is the Astrid Blanket by Mallory Crawl, and I'm making squares using all the yarns from an individual box together. And then I'm going to combine all the squares from all 4 boxes into a massive blanket, and I'm so excited for this project. I've done a lot of squares already, but I've got a lot more to do. And so in this video, you're going to see me open this box, read the book, open the yarn, and get working on these blanket squares. Oh, cute. Woolberry Fiber Co. tissue paper. Let me unbox. All right, so here are all of my goodies. I'm excited to open this book and find out what is included. But first, let me tell you, I've got the 4 skeins of yarn with the different pages numbered on them. This is a summer pod kit. I'm so excited. This is gonna smell so good. So basically, you put it in a pot of water on the stove and you just have it at a really light, gentle boil of simmer, and it makes your house smell so good. My mom would do this sometimes in the winter just to add humidity back into the home. I don't feel like she ever added a lot of good smelly smells like this, so I'm really excited for that. There's a couple needle stoppers. There's this cute pin, Lost in a Book by Occasionalish. There's this lavender Earl Grey tea. It is black tea, so I will not be drinking this, but I'm sure people at my work would love to partake. She had some tea from this brand in another box that I really enjoyed, so I bet that this would be really good. Tea with Tay. And the book. I don't know what's included, so I'm really excited to see. We'll see if it's already on my TBR, if I already have a copy or not. So far, I've been 3 for 3 new books that I have not read yet, which is really exciting. So we'll see what book this is. Oh my gosh, I'm so bad at opening this. Ah! Okay. Oh, The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. So I actually have not read this, which is awesome. So I'm really excited to be able to read this. I think I might have a copy on my bookshelf that my mother-in-law gave me. Like, she was done reading and so she passed it on to me, but I've not spent money buying this book. So that's fun. If I like it, I can pass on my extra copy to someone else, which should be really fun. The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. I think she recently had another book come out, which I've been interested in, and there's a super long wait at the library. So it'll be good for me to get exposure to her as an author and decide if I want to keep reading her books. I'm really excited. Honestly, the color story that's going on with this package is just amazing. Oh, and I just remembered that she always includes inside the book a bookmark. Oh, this one's so pretty. The fall vibes. The first yarn we're opening is on page 42, so that'll take a minute to get to this book. So there's about 400 pages in this book, 407 if I saw correctly. These yarns that I will be opening on page 42, page 109, page 212, and page 386. Let's jump right into reading The Lost Bookshop. So I've started the book, and let's talk a little bit about what's going on. We are only just learning who our characters are. I'm about 20 pages in. I'm on chapter 4, so I've met all 3 of our main characters. Opaline, whose story we see in the 1920s. It sounds like she finds rare books and resells them. Kind of might be like what her career ends up being. She called herself a book dealer. We hear her perspective when she's in her 20s, in the 1920s. And then we also see 2 other perspectives of Martha and Henry, who are living in a modern time. And Martha is escaping a toxic and abusive relationship, and she has a job as a live-in housemaid for this old eccentric lady. And Henry, I honestly don't know what he's doing. He is trying to find evidence of a lost bookshop. So he was hanging around this mansion. Martha saw him and called him out for lingering. And that's all we have. And I honestly don't get a lot from the back cover. It seems like this is a historical fiction of, multiple lives, multiple POVs that kind of get threaded together. Something mysterious about this lost bookshop. Honestly, it's giving me the same vibes as The Lost Apothecary by, is it Sarah Penner? So we'll see, I guess, what happens. I was really hoping I could get to the first skein of yarn. We shall see. I'm staying up for night shift, and it is like 2:30 in the morning, and I am feeling it. I was feeling really great until I wanted to get cozy because I'm cold, and so I'm like all wrapped up in the blanket and lying down, and I'm fading fast. Hopefully we can get to that tonight. I think I'm going to enjoy this book. There might even be some magical realism, I'm not sure. But this type of historical fiction I tend to enjoy. Not sure if it'll be a favorite of mine, but I think it'll be a solid read. Just first impressions. Okay, friend, you need to let me go. I need to go get my skein of yarn, but you can come back and snuggle in a minute. An Irish writer by the name of Joyce. His debut novel, Ulysses. That sounds like someone in history I should know about. James Joyce, is that who I'm thinking of? I'm sorry, Alfred. Ooh. I'm gonna show this in better lighting tomorrow. But it's this almost like a toffee brown with some darker speckles. Definitely a variegated, but more of a tonal variegated because it's all within the same color family. Shakespeare and Company. So Shakespeare and Company is the name of the bookstore in Paris that Opaline ends up getting a job at. So she's kind of running away from her life. She's told that she needs to get married. It's the 1920s. She wants to be an independent woman. She has not thought out this plan to run away and be independent very much. Like she doesn't have a lot of savings. She doesn't really know like where she's going or what she's doing. Her French is pretty mediocre as an English woman, and thankfully she ran into this shop, Shakespeare and Company, and it is owned by an American, and she got a job. So she'll start to take her understanding of good quality book from her experience reading and learning from her own father and growing her skills as a potential book dealer. So I'm excited to see where her storyline goes. I still really don't know Martha and Henry, what they're doing. I think together they may find out about Opaline and her story, but that's kind of my impression. Maybe there's a love interest there between Martha and Henry, but I feel like I still don't really know those characters very much. I'm about 10% of the way into this book, and I'm intrigued. I might read another chapter or two because I'm enjoying myself, and then I'm going to get ready to take my nap. Hello. Last clip you saw, I was reading on my night shift, getting a few pages, and I did not quite make it to the next skein of yarn. So that is my goal today, to just read a little bit more and open skein number 2, which I opened on page 109. So I'm not too far away from that. We are currently on page 92, so just a little bit of reading that I really want to get to today. I also wanted to kind of touch base about this book, and I will say that my feelings about it are changing. I feel like this book is closer to a 3 than a 4 at this point, just what I'm anticipating. And I generally like historical fiction. I like multi-POV type of books. It seems like there is a subplot of romance in here. There's a little bit of a mystery about what happened to this lost bookshop that Opaline owned. Maybe? I'm not liking these characters. I think that's the thing that is catching me off guard, that's making me not like this book as much. I'm getting kind of annoyed. So there's 2 people in modern days, and then there's one person in the 1920s, Opaline. And the 2 people, Henry and Martha, they're almost friends at this point, but their interactions are just really like awkward and not in an endearing way. Henry had kind of like an awkward meet cute, saying the wrong thing type of whatever, but he continues to say some really stupid things. I don't know if the author is trying to portray him in a certain way on purpose, or if the author thinks that it's cute that he's like kind of awkward. I do not. I'm very bugged by him. And then as far as Martha goes, it's giving impressions that she has experienced a lot of trauma in her life, that she's never had a lot of opportunities. She is like showing reverence towards books, and she's like, wow, the stories they can hold. Like, let me find a line for you. Surrounded by all of this learning, it was hard not to feel like no matter how much you studied, you would never have an inch of the knowledge contained in this room. And that's just like one example, but I do not like her characterization. It doesn't really make sense to me. She shows such reverence towards these books and the stories they contain, and she has this like big desire to like learn more. But then also on the other hand, she has probably never read a book in her life. Like, she doesn't know To Kill a Mockingbird at all. Like, she doesn't recognize famous author names. I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. Like, I understand if you're wanting to become more of a reader, why there's like a huge gap between who she is and who she may want to be, and I'm not seeing the connection at all. And that's kind of frustrating to me. I'm not getting her. We'll see how I feel about this book, if maybe I warm up to these characters, but I just am not a super fan of them. Like I said, I've just got a little bit left to read, and then I can open the next skein of yarn. I wonder if the next skein will be named Mr. Fitzpatrick's Nostalgia Shop. Whoa! My gosh, this is so fun. Aha! So this book has alluded to some magical realism elements, but we got a huge hit of it just now on page 121. And there's been, like little inklings, but this is for sure pointing in the direction that this book is going as far as like the magical realism, some kind of mysterious magic going on. Okay, so we're also learning a little bit more that
Martha she says issues with books, but I don't really know, like, why. So maybe I will come to understand her a little better. Girl, Opaline's drama. Oh my goodness. Sounds like romance is going to be a stronger motivator for what's happening next in the story. Bonkers. I did not see that coming. At least not in the way that it happened. We have a long way to go in the book. There's a lot more that's going to happen. Snuggled up and cozy on this fine autumn day to continue reading in The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. And I'm on page 141. The next yarn I can open on page 212. So I've got a little ways to go, but I would love to be able to open that third skein of yarn today. In this sitting, I do have some snacks with me, and I did make myself some tea. It is very warm, even though I added some cream and that kind of cooled it down a little bit. It is still very hot, so we'll see when I can break into this. But the tea that came in this package is a high caffeine tea. It was like a lavender Earl Grey, which is definitely appropriate for the setting, but I don't drink caffeinated teas, and so I substituted with the same brand actually that has a rooibos chai that I already had. I think it might have come in a previous book box from Woolberry. I can't remember. I am still kind of a newbie when it comes to teas. I added a little bit of honey and I added some half and half because that's what I had in my fridge. But if you have any suggestions for making mixtures of teas, let me know because I'm trying to branch out and try some new things. So I've only read like 15 pages since I last talked to you. I have a lot of feelings. First off, Martha is reading a book that seems to be directly about the Lost Bookshop. But it's pretty obvious that the book she is reading is giving some inkling on this Lost Bookshop. So that's kind of interesting to read about. It's like a children's fairy tale type of a story. And then she runs into her ex, and it's super dramatic, and it's definitely a toxic relationship. It's definitely abusive, and so there's some trigger warnings for sure. And then she and Henry kiss? I don't know. Like, I've got weird feelings about it. First of all, I'm not necessarily feeling the chemistry between these two, and Henry is still putting his foot in his mouth in a lot of ways. Cheating has different definitions based on who you are, but for me, like, kissing someone else when you have a fiance is cheating. Kissing someone else when you have very recently, like within the past couple weeks, left your husband and you're still together, like you're separated, it's really messy. And I'm not a huge fan of messy relationships. I don't mind having, messy people because everyone is unique, but I feel like why get into a relationship when things are messy? Clearly need to figure some stuff out personally before bringing a relationship in, is my personal thoughts. So I'm not a huge fan of this dynamic going on, but I guess we'll see what happens from here. Finally standing up for herself. This is kind of gruesome. Okay, we talked about magical realism before. Evidence of this crime, this accident, have disappeared. All this talk about like abusive relationships is kind of hard to read. And I just recently finished reading Wayward by Amelia Hart, which is very graphic as far as the abuse that happens in that book. And so reading this again, this isn't as graphic, but it still is pretty graphic. And it was, alluded to at the beginning of the book. It's just gotten more and more explicitly talked about throughout this book. So it's been kind of building to a crescendo. So definitely check the trigger warnings because there's a lot of talk about abuse. Not just talk of, but also on-page abuse in this book. Time to open the next one. Ooh. Emily Bronte's unfinished manuscript. Story keeps throwing in some magical realism, but the overall tone of the story isn't like a magical realism tone, so I'm having a hard time like being on board with it. Does that make sense? But the magical realism is amping up for sure. And we're getting some connections with a lost manuscript from the past and our main characters at the present time, like Martha. All right, so I have been piecing away at this. I have about 100 pages left of this book, and I'm just waiting for a podcast that I edited to upload onto YouTube. So I am going to jump right back into this, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening. A little bit triggering. Anything that is in the realm of like oppression of women, kind of hard to read right now. And the 1920s were not a time known for being amazing for women, especially those who did not have a husband, pregnant out of wedlock, who were still entrenched in the hierarchy of society. Opaline, coming from a wealthier, more well-known family, definitely had more struggles finding her own way and escaping from the expectations of her family and of society. And she's now been caught out. It's hard to read about, FYI. And it is kind of reminiscent of Mrs. Quinn's rise to fame. You get a flashback, and I think that was in the 40s or 50s, but still you get a flashback. And I don't know, there's just like some similarities. It's kind of interesting that we get 2 books in a row that are having me feel certain ways, but it's definitely showing what Bethany likes to read. Like, I'm getting a very strong sense of what she enjoys reading, and so that's kind of interesting. I'm going to be reading a little bit more as Henry and Martha have had a lot of ups and downs in their friendship, relationship, whatever they have ship. They're maybe going to be finding out more about Opaline and finally understanding why she's been forgotten to history. She says, "Forget my brother. Is his word more valuable than mine?" Fortunately, yes. I don't know why, but I really love finding editing mistakes like that capital I in ignored. And I found one just a couple pages later. Yes, right here, 355, where this paragraph ends, but it's indented on the last line. I feel like I've been reading this book for forever. I am ready to be done. Not a bad book, but definitely not a favorite. I'm ready to move on. And it's been so long since I've opened yarn, because I think it was early page 200 that the last skein was opened on. I've had to read almost 200 pages to get there. So my goal is, I'm on page 359. I really, really, really want to get to the final skein to open that up. Then finish up the book the rest of the day, hopefully, or maybe into tomorrow, so that I can start working on my crochet squares. We just got a big truth bomb that, I mean, I guess at the very beginning of this book, I had an inkling about, and then I totally forgot about it until just now when they dropped the truth. And the drama continues. Oh my goodness. I cannot put this book down. I've only got like 20 pages left.
I wasn't going crazy when I thought that this color looked like one we already have. This one's definitely more green leaning, and this one is more blue leaning, but they're pretty close. This is a beautiful color palette, though I think my favorite might be this one, just because of the variegation is just really, really beautiful. But I do like all the colors. I'm excited to see what they look like all worked up together. You want to catch apple juice? We're not playing catch with the apple juice. Do you need some apple juice to drink? Yeah. I think we'll get a cup then. It is another day and I'm trying really hard to work on these squares and get them done today. I have a couple that I have completed. This is my first configuration, where I have skein 1, skein 2, skein 3, skein 4 in that order. And then I kind of made like an assembly line for the other configurations where I rotated through. So let me show you. Okay, so the next ones that I will have done, these start with skein 2, skein 3, skein 4, and then I'll go back and do skein 1. These ones, I have skein 3, skein 4, and then I'll go back and do skein 1, skein 2 around. And then I have the middles of the skein 4 done as well. I think I made 7 of each configuration for my other book boxes. So I'm just doing 3 at this point, but then I'll rotate through again just so I don't have 1,000 little pieces. I figured this was easier to keep track of, to do 3 of each configuration. I've done those 3. I'll go and finish these 3 with the 4th round, and then so on and so forth. If you have made the Asher blanket and you haven't seen my other videos, I actually modified the pattern a little bit. So typically the pattern goes round 1, round 2, and then it skips right to this round 3. But I added this 3rd round that is more puff stitches. So what I did is, instead of having 2 puff stitches in each chain 1 space, I did like some combo puff stitches, some split puff stitches, and then I did 1 random puff. So it looks like there's 3 puffs, but actually it is the second half of this split puff, 1 regular puff, and then the first half of this split puff. So it looks like 3 puff stitches to maintain the same number of chain 1 spaces to work into for the now 4th round, but also to make this lie fairly flat. I definitely still need to block all of these, but I would say that they look pretty good. So I'm going to be working some more on these. We'll see how far I get today, but I'm hoping that I can have at least 1 of each kind of square to show off when I give you my final thoughts on this book box, this book, and this yarn. Let's talk about my final thoughts on The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods and this yarn from Woolberry Fiber Co. So I have completed at least 1 square of each color configuration to show you what they'll look like, but I am going to be continuing to work on these squares, trying to get them all done so that I can film my next vlog, which will be combining all of these squares together in a blanket, my Woolberry Fiber Book Society box blanket. I'm so excited. That's going to be a huge project to work on for December, so keep an eye out for that vlog. But for this fall box, I already showed you, this is the first configuration. I've also got, this is the next one, or I do need to weave in my ends and trim them, but I did try to crochet over them if I could. My 3rd configuration. and my fourth configuration. I don't know how it's gonna come off on the camera. In person, this teal and this blue are a little bit more different than it looks to me looking in my camera. So we'll see how it shows up when I am editing it. But I love this color palette. It is perfect fall vibes. That's something I really like that Bethany does. She's really good at capturing the feeling and the vibe in a color, not necessarily taking a picture and making yarn with the same colors as the picture, but she'll make yarn with the same vibes. And so I really like doing these mystery boxes from her because I know that there's a lot of heart and artistry in the colors that she creates to represent what's happening on these pages of the book. So as a recap for the colors, we've got Shakespeare and Company, Mr. Fitzpatrick's Nostalgia Shop, Emily Bronte's Unfinished Manuscript, and Claim Your Birthright. So some really beautiful colors. And again, for this project, I'm gonna use up every scrap of this yarn. So unfortunately, I will not have extra bits to use for other things, but I do love these colors and I'm excited to capture them in my blankets. Ta-da! They're so pretty. I love them. As far as the goodies for this box, we have the simmer pot, which smelled really good. I did not partake of the tea because I don't drink caffeinated tea, but we still have this cute little bookish pin, which is adorable. I have a little collection started. I don't collect pins, but they've been coming in enough mystery boxes that I have a little mini collection now. I can add those too. And then the Stitch Stoppers pile of books, which again, I didn't use for this project because I am crocheting, but that's okay. I'm sure I will use them for other knitting projects because I knit more than I crochet. I don't think I mentioned it, but for this pattern, I'm using an eye hook, 5.5 millimeter, and I'm also holding my yarn double. If I didn't mention that before, I've got 2 strands, so that means I am using this yarn really quickly because crochet eats up a lot more yarn than knitting does, and holding everything double. So this has been a really fun palette cleanser type of a project, and so I'm excited to keep making these squares and getting them ready for my big blanket. And it just snowed today, the first snow of the season, and so nice cozy vibes. I had the simmer pot going, I enjoyed a hot chocolate, working on some crochet for a blanket. It's just like great Saturday cozy at home vibes. Now let's talk about the book, The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. And I actually already had a copy of this book, which is the first time that's happened with Woolberry's book box. So I had a duplicate. I will be donating the other one. So I already had this on my radar, something I wanted to read, but I hadn't gotten to yet. So I'm really glad that it was in the book box so I could finally read it. This is a multi-POV historical fiction with some magical realism where you follow Martha and Henry in the modern time and Opaline in the 1920s to 50s. You see this magical lost bookshop that Henry is trying to find. He's trying to get Martha's help because she's living next door to where that bookshop should be. And you follow these 3 characters and learn more about this bookshop. When I first started this book, it definitely reminded me of The Lost Apothecary by, is it Sarah Penner? And I really enjoyed that book, so I thought that I would really love this one. And this book kind of fell short for me. I will talk about what I loved from it first. I thought the premise was really interesting. This lost bookshop that should be at an address but wasn't there. And I like following multi-POV, especially with a historical aspect. And I really loved Opaline as a character, and I really loved hearing her perspective, and I enjoyed following her story way more than I enjoyed following Martha and Henry. So I guess that's one thing. I wish there was a little bit more Opaline than Henry and Martha. But what can you do? I feel like as an author, it's really hard to have a perfect balance of multi-POVs. You can't please everyone. So I personally really loved Opaline's character, and I love that historical aspect of the story. I also thought that these characters had really interesting and distinct backgrounds, between Opaline coming from a wealthier family and she is running away from her brother's expectations to marry a man she has not met. And so she escapes to Paris and she goes on to work at this bookshop and become a book dealer, and you follow her life, the ups and downs of this journey she goes on. Martha is escaping an abusive husband, and she finds herself working as a housekeeper in this large building for Madame Baudin. And then Henry is a PhD candidate trying to find evidence of this lost bookshop, and to see their lives intertwine. It was very interesting having these distinct characters and seeing how they all contributed to this story. So it was very interesting from the start. What lost me for this book? Okay, first and foremost, I think the thing that bothered me the most was the relationship between Martha and Henry. I did not see the chemistry there, and she was like, oh, he's handsome and funny, and no, he's not. He was really annoying, and he kept saying some really stupid stuff, and he would think to himself, oh wow, that was really stupid, why did I say that? But it just never got better. It wasn't like an awkward meet cute. He was just awkward the whole time. So I never got convinced of their chemistry, and I was just annoyed, especially at Henry. But then I didn't understand how Martha was falling in love with him. I just didn't see the chemistry, and honestly, that romance was a bigger part of the story than I had hoped for. I really wish it had taken a huge backseat and was just an inkling of like, oh, maybe there's something there. I think I would have liked this book a lot more. I also didn't necessarily understand Martha as we learn more about her character. There were some things about her character that just didn't make sense and were never clarified, like why she was afraid of books or reading at the beginning of this story. And I think I already mentioned she had a fascination with books and a reverence for books, but then she was scared to read them, and it just didn't make sense. I just didn't understand it. And so it just didn't compute. I had a really hard time understanding her as a character. As we learn more about her, it just didn't quite fit together, if that makes sense. It didn't paint a clearer picture on who she was as a character. I also feel like the magical realism kind of missed the mark in this book. I need a little bit more reasoning behind the magical realism. And obviously some things are magical and you just understand, but it felt like things were happening and there wasn't a purpose to them. I don't know. It just felt a little bit disjointed and clunky, if that makes sense, for the magical realism. I want it to kind of all blend together and flow and feel very purposeful in relation to other elements of magical realism rather than just purposeful to like move the plot along. And then finally, this book ended with so many questions, and I think that also contributed to my feelings that the magical realism was just clunky and not well thought out, that it left a lot of loose ends, that I don't need all the answers, but I need a little bit more closure on what is going on, because we have a lot of things that felt intentional just to keep the plot going. Like there was an adoption that didn't get revealed to the end of the story. Her mom didn't speak for the first half of the book at all. So apparently they just spoke in sign language at home. That made no sense, like why that was. We never got any answers. We didn't get any answers about Madame Boden. It just felt unsatisfying to read a book that didn't give you any answers, or like the things didn't wrap up, but not in a way that leaves it open for another story, more in like it didn't get well thought through. And that's my personal feelings about that. If you love this book, I am so happy for you. But I rated this a 2.75. I did not enjoy it. Like there were a lot of things that I had issues with, and I think I was just mostly disappointed because I thought I would like this more than I did. But again, some people really love this book and this is the perfect little cozy read for them. I think it just wasn't what I was looking for when I am thinking of a multi-POV historical novel with magical realism in it. It just didn't hit the marks that I was looking for in my type of story. So if you've read The Lost Bookshop, let me know what your thoughts are, because I would love to have more discussion about this, since in looking at the reviews on Storygraph, I feel a little bit like I missed something maybe. And I can suspend my disbelief for magical realism. I love magical realism, but this just did not quite do it for me. I have said this before and I will say it again. I love Woolberry Fiber Coast Book Society boxes because it's a chance for me to read a book and to enjoy opening some yarn based on that story, have some fun goodies. It's like having a countdown or an advent any time of year, and being able to combine my love for yarn and books together just makes me so happy. So even if I don't necessarily enjoy the book as much as like my favorite read, I still really love this experience of opening these boxes and getting to enjoy these goodies. While this book box has completed, there was one for each of the 4 seasons and fall was the last season. Woolberry is doing a like sock book club thing where I think I get a sock set or a skein of sock yarn, a book, and then maybe a couple small goodies. every other month throughout the next year. So there's going to be 7 because it starts December this year and ends December next year. And I'm doing the subscription for that. I'm really excited. So that should be coming within the next couple of weeks. So I'll be working on that soon. I don't have a project yet in mind, so I need to think of what I want to make with that yarn. But for now, I'm going to be working some more on these squares and getting ready to complete my blanket. I am so excited. I have not made like a full-size blanket. We'll see how big it gets with all of these squares. Thank you so much for joining me for this book and yarn vlog. And if you like this type of content, then I invite you to stick around, subscribe, and hit the bell notification to be notified every time I post a new video. I like to post about all things yarny, bookish, and everything in between. Until next time, happy making and happy reading.